Hey guys, welcome to the Wild Bit Show. I'm Meghna,
And I'm Upamanyu.
and we've got a great show planned for you. We're obviously going to be talking about the headline topic why mountain wildlife are on an escalator to extinction, what is the risk from climate change, and with that, we're also going to be talking about how speed limits for ships without any, if speed limits for ships are necessary to protect endangered whales from vessel strikes, or if the animals could survive without them. And then we have some stories about the war and how it affects conservation scientists, especially in Iran, as the war is ongoing at the moment. And we have one positive story of the fishermen from Cabo Verde and how they've been protecting the sea. What else do we have on the roster ropes?
Um, Obviously, the heat waves that is going about in Europe, which is becoming deadlier by the day. We will be talking about that and sort of our responsibilities surrounding that um, as a society and planet. Of course, there is something from Donald Trump, but you know um, he's portrayed as an accidental hero this time by the media at least. So we'll see what that is all about. And then there is another curious story of how scientists are trying to make a frog poisonous again intentionally. As Meghna said, there are some war stories as well. Scientists from Gaza that are tracking manta rays in the war zone, and particularly climate change is affecting a particularly strange industry, which you might not have thought to be linked with climate change. Yeah, and we'll have some smaller stories as well, as always, if we have the time to cover them.
Okay, so let's dive into our headline topic. Tropical mountain wildlife are at high risk from climate change impacts, a study finds. A new study warns that tropical mountain wildlife faces mounting threats as climate change combines with land use pressures. Many mountain species are endemic, tolerating only narrow climatic conditions, and face an escalator to extinction as warming pushes them to ever higher elevations with nowhere left to go. Researcher Chiara Dragonetti and colleagues analyzed 395 species, 361 birds, and 34 mammals using global distribution datasets and computer models to project 2050 habitats under high and low emission scenarios. Under high emission, species would lose 16% more range than under low emissions, which obviously we do know. Since most studied species are endemic, 112 species and 15 mammal species exist only on single mountains or small ranges. Even modest habitat loss could dramatically heighten extinction risk. Poor dispersal ability among certain species compounds the problem further. Um, and then our discussion question is that what does the escalator to extinction reveal about climate change being not just a temporary problem, but a permanent problem? And I think me and Oops, we were talking about when we were thinking about keeping this as our headline topic, we were like, there's only so much that you can go up a mountain, and then there's
Hmm.
nothing about that. So yeah, I guess like heaven is about that. So that's where you're sending on the animals to, which is why it is an escalator to extinction.
Yeah. Um, Interesting. When you mentioned heaven again, slightly related to this, maybe. Um, so when you mentioned heaven, one of the first things that the astronauts who went to the moon in back in the 60s and recently as well were asked was, did you see heaven or did you see God? So I think that's the only solution um, there, as you said. But on a more serious note, the greenhouse gas emissions and all the other stuff that is contributing to climate change um, is pushing the mountain wildlife, higher and higher up the mountain. Surprisingly, like, I don't know if you guys know, but there is a lot of um, mountain wildlife in Africa, and you might have seen images of those baboons which live in high mountain environments in Africa. Um, so they were one of the first documented species that was, observed with this kind of behavior, that they're every year that they're moving up the mountain. But yeah, that is with every mountain species. And you already, when you say mountain species, every one of you listening would already have like a species in mind, which comes to mind, maybe a caribou, maybe a lynx, maybe snow leopards, and things like that. So yeah, they're very precarious situations.
Yes, and especially with birds, endemic birds, they're not very good with changes. So there are like lots of
Mm,
studies that are reported where you have these specialized species that are only that can only stay in some environments, and as soon as like even a part of it is deforested, those birds start disappearing because they can only live in those specific environments. And we like to believe that, oh, because birds have wings and they can fly and they can go everywhere, that they can just adapt, but it's quite the opposite. Like there are environments where they're suited to, so they have to keep coming back, or even when they migrate there are certain environments that they have to get to. So it's very important that climate is at a balance. In fact, a lot of times climate indicators are seen from birds. Like I was with a researcher once who said that if you have sparrows in the environment, that means it's a good environment, because sparrows are one of the first species to disappear when the
mm,
climate, when the environment gets polluted. And it is a case with where I've grown up. So we used to see a lot of sparrows growing up, but now we don't see them anymore because it's too polluted for them. And the pigeons are like rock hard, resilient, but the other species aren't. So it's the same thing with these mountain wildlife. Like they stay on the mountains because that is exactly where they are meant to stay. So if that disappears, they have nowhere to go.
mm, mm. Yeah, I think. But what would you say? Like I'm just putting being trying to be the devil's advocate. People will be like, oh, well, um, because humans are very adaptable to different climates and conditions. Again, within a limit, but we are, um,
No,
and
we're not adaptable at all. Like we have ACs and we have fans, we have coolers and we have heaters.
no,
We
but
are
that is only the last
very
100 years.
adaptable. Yeah, but
But
we're
that's only the
very
last
adaptable.
100 years.
No, even our architecture before that, if you go into like old, what do you say, like in India itself, if you go to like historical forts, they actually made their ventilation and the windows in such a way that there's cross ventilation, there's cooling, there's a lot of air
then
coming in.
then I would say that is the last 1,000 years. But we have been here for 100,000 years, like 1 lakh years.
Yeah, but then it also depends on how hot it was back then. Like, are
Mm,
we
pretty
actually
hot
like,
and pretty cold. We
and
went through
how?
the ice age. We were born in Africa in like extreme heat, and then we went through the entire ice age
It's not
without any
extreme.
technology.
It's not extreme heat. Like I think back then it would not have been extreme. The extreme is now. The extreme wasn't there, right?
I mean, the ice had to melt, so that had to be extreme for all that ice to melt.
Wait, is it like just a myth that we were part of the ice age, or
No,
were we
no, we
actually
were.
part?
We were actually part of the last ice age. We were
So we
hunting mammoths and things like that. So my point is, to the skeptics who will say that we adapt to all these different environments, so the birds must also adapt. And if they don't adapt, survival of the fittest, let them die.
Yeah, that is true. But give me 1 minute. I think I'm still very dark. I'm just going to try to draw the curtains 1 minute because I
Okay.
myself feel like I'm just too dark.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So that is something the skeptics would say, and my view on that would be that you know it is not these birds and animals, they're very special and they've evolved in a very special kind of way to actually adapt, or they have evolved over millions of years to adapt to that very specific temperature range and things like that. And this temperature range, the problem is this is not brought on naturally. So the animals haven't had the time to adapt themselves, again to that new new way of I guess the new climate. So it has happened so drastically. That's the whole problem there. Mm.
Yes, exactly. That I think that is the problem because if it was very slow and very controlled, then probably the animals would be fine. You know how we've heard of that experiment with the frogs? So
Mm.
if you put a frog in boiling water, it would jump out in like one instant. But
Mm.
if you kept a frog in like normal temperature water and then you kept raising the temperature slowly and slowly and slowly,
Mm.
then the frog would keep thinking that it's comfortable, it's comfortable, and it's comfortable. And then
Mm.
finally, when it actually reaches boiling, it's too late for it to try to escape. So in that case, obviously, it's not a great example. I'm sorry, it does the frogs to die in the end, but it's one of trying to adjust because when temperatures increase very slowly. But in our case, it's like putting a bird in boiling water, and right now that's what is happening. The change is happening so rapidly that the insects, the animals, the plants, none of them are able to adjust, and we are only adjusting because we have enough technology to adjust. Otherwise, we can't adjust either. Like if we were supposed to be out and about in this heat, we die as well. Or if it is too
Mm.
cold, we die as well.
Mm. Mm. Um, yeah, and I think these animals as well, these animals can adapt up to a certain extent. It's not that they are absolutely cannot adapt. They can adapt, but only to a certain extent. And after that, it's very difficult for them to adjust, or get used to that temperature. Now, think about this. Like, we have had such a deep impact that these animals have, even with their adaptations, even with their um, you know temperature adaptations and all kinds of adaptations, they haven't been able to adapt. That the temperature or the changes have been so drastic. That's really
Yeah,
something to think about.
that is absolutely true, and I mean we mostly talk about ourselves. We talk about Europe and the heat waves. We talk about Western disturbances. We talk about typhoons. We talk about cyclones. We talk about everything that's affecting us. But we don't realize that everything that affects us is equally affecting everything around us, the environment basically, and anything that is more susceptible. Which probably means that we are like pigeons. We're more resilient, or we have found ways to be resilient. But there are animals like the sparrows or other animals that are extinct now that just cannot adapt. So we have to think about what consequences we have on the environment and what consequences climate change and global warming um, present, and we have to take steps to mitigate it. It's already too late, but it's never too late.
Yeah, I think even the for um, thinkers, the great thinkers in this space, are always saying that there's still time. You know, um, there is a proverb um, in Hindi and a lot of other Indian languages as well, which says, when you wake up, that's your that's the morning for you. So it's not too late to wake up. That is what I mean to say. Um, cool. Um, but I think we have spoken a lot about like what are the basic and small steps you can take at an individual level, haven't we?
Yeah, and what the steps that companies have to take and governments have to take. We've spoken about that as well. The problem is that we can speak, we can make people aware, we can get petitions, we can do all of that. But till everyone doesn't want to change, there's not really going to be much change.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's true. That's true. Um, cool.
Yeah. Go ahead, go to the next topic.
Um, like Meghna, we briefly mentioned Europe and its heat wave and all the I guess the discussion that is going about in it, because it's affecting humans finally, and also because it's a, I guess, a economic power or a global power or whatever, however you want to say it. If this was happening in any other country, it wouldn't be as much reported as this Europe story is being reported right now across all kinds of media. And if it were, a lesser developed country, it wouldn't be. Or if it was happening to animals, it wouldn't be. And that's why our show exists partly as well, because we want to report the stories that is affecting animals. But this thing is affecting humans, but also will be definitely affecting animals as well. This is a story from the conservation um, paper, and this says Europe is battling a record breaking heat wave. What's making it so severe? Europe is experiencing a deadly record breaking heat wave. France has endured its hottest days in record history, with western regions reaching between 39 degrees Celsius and 43 degrees Celsius. The United Kingdom logged its warmest June day ever at 36.1 degrees Celsius, while Spain, Germany, Austria, and the Netherlands and the Switzerland have each broken multiple June temperature records at several sites. Dozens have already drowned in France, drowned,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They
attempting to
drowned.
cool off.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. My God, that is serious. Environmental epidemiologist Pierre Masselot, who studies heat wave death tolls, notes that the eerie parallels to 2003, when extreme heat disproportionately killed elderly people, particularly women living alone. Climate scientists warn that there were once exceptional heat events have become routine occurrences, intensified by carbon pollution and worsened by decades of inadequate adaptation, adaptation planning across European governments and infrastructure. Scientists are alarmed for two key reasons. The heat wave's timing is unusually early. Peak European heat typically arrives in mid to late July, and it fits a much broader global pattern that includes record sea surface temperatures, a newly declared El Nino, and sustained deadly heat waves across India and Pakistan since April, all pointing to deepening climate disruption. So, yeah, India is at the risk of facing a bad monsoon this year. And for the unaware, because India is an agrarian country, um, it is very important um, for us to have that rainfall for our crops, for our economy, and all these other things. Now, the discussion questions we have is, if heat waves now arrive a month early, when does unprecedented stop being news and start being normal? And why does Europe keep treating deadly heat waves as surprises when scientists have warned us for decades? Very thought provoking questions and right questions. Yeah.
Yeah. But with the monsoon, actually, there are two separate news. It does say that the monsoon is going to be as intense um as the heat wave because of the disturbances and the changing climate pattern. So it's not going to be like consistent, but if it hits, it will hit really hard. So this has happened in places like in Bombay. It rained for like 9 days continuously. There were red alerts, and the entire roads were flooded. And now it's been a week of no rain, and this is probably how it's going to be. So there is going to be like crazy rains, but it's not going to be the way the rain has to fall. So even that is unsustainable for crops. But
Yeah.
with Europe and its heat wave, and I mean, Europe is something that comes into the news because Europe and US are the two places that are talked about the most. And if
Mm,
climate scientists have been warning how these have become, like routine occurrences, then we have to take that into mind and think about what we're doing. And with Europe, why they're really suffering is because they're not prepared for this. They don't have the kind of infrastructure or the facilities. They don't even have fans. Like, fans
mm,
is something that's new for them. So a lot of
mm,
people keep table fans at their homes, but structurally they don't have like the fitting for a fan in your
mm,
room. And forget about ACs, but there's been like a crazy, crazy demand for air conditioners this year. It's been very hot, so they have needed that. And heat wave kills people across the world. Like even in India, it happens, but we just assume that, oh, it does get hot in India. But just because
mm,
it doesn't get hot in Europe, now we're like, oh my god, it's so hot in Europe, and people are dying across the country.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the important thing there also is like this has been warned about multiple times by multiple scientists at multiple, like you would have to be living under a rock if you don't know that like this is happening, right?
Yeah.
But still it has been such an extraordinary effort. Let's put it that way. Such an extraordinary effort it has been to actually try and um, I guess make the governments or from the lowest level to the highest level. It has been such an effort to make anyone believe, and even at the highest levels we have leaders who refuse to believe climate change or refuse to um, be on board with climate change. In that situation, it's very difficult to, I guess, do anything.
Do
Uh,
you do you think it's because like most of the people in power in the government positions are people who are much older, and older people are a little senile, and they don't like they don't like to change their opinion about what's happening in the real world, and also maybe because they think they just have a few more years to live, like um it actually baffles me the kind of things Trump does when he's in his late 70s, and the other people across, like we can't just blame Trump, but all political leaders across the landscape, like across everywhere, except a few, maybe, except a very few, are all really old. Like, isn't it time for you to give back to your generation and just think about yourself and what would make you a legacy?
I mean, I don't know if politicians are thinking like that. I would certainly like to think that politicians are thinking like that. But yeah, the office is filled with boomers mostly. And there will come a time when all the boomers are dead. There will have to come a time. Fortunately, that's soon enough, when all the boomers are dead and there's no one left from that generation, and the next generations, the golden generation or whatever it's called, will have to take on. And then, I mean, millennials are getting into power as well, our generation.
True, but that
Um,
doesn't mean all millennials make sense. A lot of them are useless and senseless too. So let's not give too
yeah.
much credit to our generation and be like, oh my God, this is the the best generation possible. We're going to make everything right. No, a lot of us actually are still in the footsteps of the older generations. And to believe that actually our generation is going to be like the change bearer or the torch bearer, I think is just something that we want to believe in, because we see that the current generation of boomers who are in our political seats are not doing great. So we just want to believe in a better future, I think.
And what else? Like, what else do we have? I think we always on this show have advocated for, um, you know, uh, stating your opinion or exercising the power of your vote, especially in, you know, in democratic countries. If you live in a democratic country, exercising your right to vote, exercising the power through your vote, and that is the best we can do to choose leaders who, obviously, I'm not saying choose a leader who is absolutely ignorant of the human suffering and the human condition and just focuses on wildlife. And although, I mean, it's hard to find such a leader, maybe, but there is a balance there, and the nature and environment and climate side of things definitely need to be taken into account. So, um, yeah.
Yes, yes, and we can't just keep. It's also strange. Like with us humans, like when it's happening, it's all like, oh my god, why am I going through this? And then once it's happened, we're like, whatever. Like now,
Mhm.
now when we think of COVID and the pandemic, we're like, oh wow, what all did we do that time? All the changes. Oh my god, how much life did we lose? But we don't repent, or we don't be like, oh, we need to make those changes permanent. No, they were all temporary because that period's gone. So like we have that switch, like I think Oops had spoken about this. That we have a tendency to forget the sad things and remember the good
I
things.
mean, it is a
uh,
biological. It's hardware wired into our brain, and that's a survival technique that
Yeah, but I
has
think
evolved.
we need to switch that survival technique off somehow, because we really need to take into account. So now that Europe's heat waves have gone, so like everyone's like, oh yeah, Europe is beautiful again. It's not so problematic. We can stay without fans. It's not so bad. And again, when it's in news next year, that is when people will again start talking about, oh my god, it's so hot in Europe. But that's not how it should work, right? Like it's hot this year. What can we do so it doesn't happen next year? That's how the attitude has to be.
That's how attitude has to change. And I think there are many things, quite a many few things that we can do as an individual to impact those kinds of things. Again, I think a lot of people are not choosing to, reproduce. That is generally a good thing. Um,
But others are compensating for it by far. Have
maybe,
you have you even seen
but
those
again,
reels on
no.
Facebook and Instagram? There are like these people who are really proud of having big families. So
Oh yes, yes.
they'll have this
Like the
mom. They'll have this mom, and she'll be like, oh, I had this kid at 19, this at 21, 22, 23, 24. And then they'll have like all the years I was pregnant. And I'm like, how is it something to show off or be proud of? Like,
No, but I would like to amend my statement a little bit. Again, I don't want to sound too inconsiderate to our own species, but like, again, reproducing is good because it has connections to mental health as well. So take your own choice. I don't want to dictate what you do in that space. But definitely less humans would be a good thing overall. And then I think also
okay,
eating.
talking about less humans, I wanted to understand like why exactly did India have such a population boom? Like till the Britishers left, we were not that populated. What exactly happened that made us so desperate to just have so many babies and populate to this level?
I don't like India's population is great because we have great access to food. Our agriculture is great. That's why India has such a big population. And also, I think we think about the population growth in a different way because we see the graphs where uh, you know there's been flat, 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 and then exponential. But that graph is
Mm.
over a long period of time. So if you take the 10 years before today and then see the growth will be like that flat and then exponential. And then you look at the last 10 years, that will be also be exponential. You look at like that. If you look at the first 10 years, the growths are always exponential. Now, what happened during the industrial revolution is the death rate went down. So that's why that population growth was too exponential to plot on that
I
graph.
mean, obviously, with the industrial age and with the industrial expansion and with the better medical facilities, there was like a switch because people weren't dying as many people were born. There was a
Mm,
balance earlier, but there was a balance with other things as well, like with famines and wars and other.
that we
Um,
solved as well. Like the death toll went down. The
yeah,
birth rate has always been exponential each generation, but the death rates were completely out of our control for the most of human histories. And now, with
because
all
the
these
yeah,
advances, we want to live even more, even longer. There's
well, that is
this
true.
crazy billionaire, I think, who like injects plasma from his son and gives plasma to his father, and he wants to achieve, immortality or something like that. I think immortality really has been one of our fascinations since the longest time. Even the stories we have in our Vedic texts in India, the one of the oldest
But
stories talks about
tell me,
immortality.
tell me this: do you really want to live for that long in this? I don't want to use the bad word, but in this world, like this, whatever world, like
Ye- uh,
I honestly would tell people that I'm happy just living 20 more years. I really don't want to like live more than that and see this
but
earth
that's
burning.
just us. I think most people want to live that long.
For what? Like for what? Like
I don't know,
the
because we
earth's
don't
dying. Yeah.
because we don't want to. We can never. We'll have to probably have a guest, someone who
Or
wants to.
is it because we die that we want to challenge it? Like because it is so like it's such a natural process for it to die for us to die. So we want to like kind of challenge the not natural
No, but
process.
immortality has been talked about since like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years. All our epics, all the oldest text, the Rig Veda, has topics of immortality. It's like 5,000 years old. So we have been like the Amrit that we talked about, the elixir of life, the philosopher's stone. All these things, all the myths around the world have some kind of an immortality myth, the alchemy, and all these things.
I
So
agree.
has been our fascination since a very long time. So it is not a recent fascination.
But where how did we reach immortality from Europe heat waves? Oh, from okay, from but yeah, I think we've digressed too far. But yeah, I mean,
That's
I
the nature
just
of the show.
yeah, but I think yeah, like uh, Europe start doing something so that you don't suffer so much, and especially don't be that desperate that you go out swimming when you don't know how to swim and you drown.
Yeah,
But
that
yeah,
is.
I think I understand the need to cool off, but I think it shouldn't come at the expense of your life, especially when people want to be immortal. So so yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool. I guess we can move on to the next one.
Yep. And so the next topic we have, or do you want to cover the Trump one, which is very much in, or do you want
We
to do
can
that
do
after?
that.
Yeah, okay. So do the Trump one.
Um, so this is a story from the Guardian. It says again, very maybe a fluff piece for Trump, but let's do that anyway. Donald Trump may be the accidental hero of a feel-good climate tale, even as creeping horror story plays alongside. Donald Trump's attack on Iran, triggering a Strait of Hormuz blockade, has unexpectedly accelerated global interest in renewables and clean energy, making him an accidental climate hero. This optimistic storyline runs alongside a grimmer reality. A deadly heat wave has killed over 1,300 people across Europe, a figure scientists will be vastly understate the true toll. Scientists expect will vastly understate the true toll. In 2022, a similar European heatwave ultimately claimed 60,000 lives. My God, that's a big number for heat waves. Current temperatures are running 5 to 12 degrees Celsius above seasonal averages, with nearly half of Europe's 850 largest cities enduring record heat stress. Meanwhile, twin earthquakes in Venezuela have killed nearly 1,900 people, potentially exceeding what?
10,000.
10,000. 1,900 to 10,000. That's a big difference.
Yeah. They said some 50,000 people are missing. The problem is that the reporting is always under-reporting in every.
Hmm.
So that's what they're saying. In
I think the
Europe, it's
confirmed number
under-reporting.
is always drastically underreported,
Yeah. So they're saying
stated.
potentially. It could
Hmm.
potentially be that much. Yeah.
Right. Two climate stories are unfolding simultaneously. One cautious reason for hope, the other slow moving catastrophe with consequences still being counted. Well, I don't know if we can call Donald Trump a hero, but
It does say
and like
accidental.
the
Accidental.
ends in this case, in my view, does not justify the means, but it has happened, and now that it has happened, if something good comes out of it, then it will be a, a welcome, you know welcome thing for us.
The only thing basically what they're saying in this is that Donald Trump isn't a hero. He isn't meant to be a hero. He wasn't. He probably looks to be a hero, but in this case, he became kind of a accidental hero because he caused so much global stress by blocking 20% of the oil by launching the fight that people were kind of like countries, economies, everyone was forced to look for better energy sources than oil, and that means that you had to transition to solar, to hydro, to wind, to in induction, everything, anything and everything that wasn't oil based. So that is the only thing that he did good. So in a way that he pushed the renewable energy sources or the renewable energy scene. He kind of made it bigger by blocking
Yeah, kind
something.
of forced their hand. And I think the as the proverb goes, necessity is the creator or the mother of all inventions. So he put us into a like, due to his actions or inactions, he put the world into a necessitative state. Now, but the thing is, when he comes across this article, he will definitely portray, look at this, what I have done, you know. He will
Yeah,
definitely portray himself as a hero.
I mean, if he could take someone else's Nobel Peace Prize and be happy about it, then yes, then
Yeah,
definitely he would portray it as as
win, a
something that,
big win, a big
yeah,
W.
that is true. But I think that the thing is that even once the war is over, which it still isn't, once it is over, then we need to take that into consideration that if the renewable energy push has really soared, then we need to keep it that way, and we need to keep trying to find how we can make renewable energy more efficient, and be on that track, so we
Hmm.
don't backtrack anymore. It shouldn't happen that once the Strait of Hormuz blockade is up, and then we have more oil, and more access to oil. It shouldn't be that, oh, now the renewable energy push was just very temporary. That
Hmm.
shouldn't be the case.
And since we are on that track, and since we have, one thing I don't understand is that, do we want to wait till the last drop of oil is over, till the
That's
time
Yeah, that's just
we
how
focus on renewables?
I think that is just how we are as humans. We only respond and we want to change when there is like a pressure on us. So like even during COVID, we had to have lockdowns, and we had to like kind of ground flights, and we had to ground movement, we had to ground a lot of things so that we didn't end up like a lot of
And
people
even
still
then we
die.
tried to the last day to try and prevent that you know
Yeah, I mean, the lockdowns happened at a time that things already started getting worse. So it wasn't like a very precautious lockdown. It was still really bad by the time like things started being locked down. It had when it had gone to a lot of countries, it started mutating. All of that had happened by the time that we actually took steps, but we wait till the last moment to take steps.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It does. So it's great. It's great, and we hope that like renewable energy, it keeps getting efficient, and there's a better push for that because we cannot keep drilling. We've spoken about the Amazon story. We've spoken about a lot of stories. I think our dependency on fossil fuels have to reduce.
mm, yeah, great that there has been a push, but the way it has been, it's not really great. But the outcome, again, we have to accept if that is the outcome, then yeah, it could lead to better. Um, if it can lead to better renewables, then yeah, we're all for it.
Yep. Uh,
But this is not the way to achieve it.
yeah,
Just
definitely,
making
definitely.
it
No,
double clear.
yeah, and definitely not by calling Trump a hero, but
No.
yeah. But yeah, we covered that news because it was very, very kind of in conjunction with the Europe news, so we had to cover it in line. Getting on to the next topic is speed limits for ships protect endangered right whales from vessel strikes. Could the animals survive without them? Whales are surprisingly difficult to spot in the water despite their size, making vessel collisions a serious and growing problem. Regina Asmetis Silvia of Whale and Dolphin Conservation North America describes how even experienced researchers can encounter whales suddenly. She once had a North Atlantic right whale surface just 30 feet from her bow. Globally, ships fatally strike an estimated 20,000 whales annually, with incidents rising along the US East Coast due to expanding global shipping. Dead whales washing ashore in New York and Delaware have increased public awareness of the issue. Since 2008, NOAA has regulated ship speeds in certain East Coast zones to protect critically endangered North Atlantic right whales, whose north south migration routes intersect with east west shipping lanes, creating dangerous overlap between wildlife and commercial vessel traffic. Our discussion question is: should ships slow down for whales, even when it costs billions in delayed global trade? And the
Mm,
answer is yes. And it is also because we have to coexist with every other animal. With the whales, they surface every 20 to 25 minutes to take a breath. They are mammals and they need to come up to take a breath. And sometimes it's difficult to spot them because you would only see a part of them, like the spout where it comes out. And then they're going back down again, which is why when the migration season is there has to be like a very strict um, what would you say, the speed limits have to be followed. And there is an example that I was talking with Oops when we were scripting for the show. There's a researcher called Rachel Moore who generally stays in French Polynesia and works from there, and she's a photographer and a conservationist. And she shared a story of how there was a very, very friendly humpback whale that had migrated to the French Polynesia in the warmer months. And she was very friendly and would come up to the humans and play with them for hours. And a ship kind of went over her face and it dislocated her mouth, and there was no way for it to survive. So it tried and struggled at the surface for a couple of hours, and then the sharks finally came to devour her. And using
mm,
her photos and using her story, Rachel urged the government to put a strict speed limit, especially during like migration season. And due to her efforts, now there is a policy in place, and I think it's very important because a lot of these things are seasonal for the whales, so we can change our pace of things according to them. Because why should they suffer at our expense just because we have more ships going out? It's their home, it's their space, and we're the ones entering it, so we have to be more considerate of it, even if it costs billions for us.
mm, mm. Um, yeah, I just wanted to share the screen. It has got a very interesting graphic. And you know, I'll just share the screen. So look at this. This is the vessel traffic. Look at the blue tadpoles moving around the screen is the vessel traffic, and the one red dot is the right whale, the northern right whale. So, and 1 year old, it's migrating from near Atlantic City, and this is just one day, couple of hours, 9th to the 10th of March 2021. So look at all the ships it has to cross in order to get to its destination. So this is crazy. Like if you had to drive in a in a road where so many cars were coming from so many different directions, the first thing that a lot of travelers complain about when driving in Asian countries is that, oh, there is no traffic rules. What is this? Is this traffic rules? And how shall a whale navigate in this crisscross of things going above its head and which can collide? And there are some photos as well with whales, a North Atlantic right whale, with all the fishing gear, and look at the scars, the propeller scars. Oh my God, look at that.
Yeah, it's really sad, right, when you see that, because the problem is that we don't take into account that it can get that bad for the whales.
Mm. I mean, this graphic is like so eye-opening for me. I like again, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and look at that. Look at that poor 1 year old right whale navigating through all these different tadpoles of the vessels traffic. It's moving about. Oh my God, at such a speed as well.
Yeah, and
OMG.
especially when you know that that is the route for the whale to
Mm,
take. So when you know that
mm,
that is the route that most whales will take, and that's with most animals, like they're very routinic. Like they have a routine. Maybe routinic isn't a word, but they have a routine, and they follow that routine like to the T.
mm,
We may or may not want routine, but they definitely have a routine. So when you know that this is the path that they regularly take, which is across the coast, then you mark an area, and for that area the ships have to slow down, because if you have a slow ship you can spot the whales easily, so you slow down and then you make it to the port, so that has to be like in imposition on the ships.
mm. Here's an interesting question. Again, putting the devil's advocate's hat, being the devil's advocate. Now, should we put like tracking tags? Should whales be compulsorily carry tracking tags?
See, I think if it's for research purposes it's different, but if we
No, for
just want
this,
to,
for this, just so we know where is the whale and we can slow down.
I don't think that is that makes a lot of sense. If at all, then you can have like surveillance drones or surveillance something else. But why should you keep tracking the whale all the time?
So that they it's for their safety.
No,
You know
the better the better
how the
solution is
governments
the
say.
better solution is like, even if you see this video that you're playing, you know
Uh,
exactly it's traveling just across the coast. It's not going out into the open ocean wherever. So it's going in a particular pattern. So you can just mark the particular pattern, and you can just shut down or slow down the traffic there. That's
mm,
all you need to do. Like once it's slow, you can spot. Like the problem is speed. It's not so
mm,
much, yeah. Like, or you can use AI for a good use in this case, like how AI is being used
mm,
in other parts of the world where, there's thermal imaging and AI to kind of warn trains that the elephants are coming in. So there might be a good use of AI and imaging, and,
yeah.
maybe kind of tying up with satellites to see where the whales are and spot them
I
and
think
have some kind of.
science can play a little great role here. There could be a hydro speaker in the bottom of the ship which plays certain kinds of calls, and then if the whales respond, then they know there's a whale, and that can slow the ship down and things like that. Because these kinds of ships are very slow to begin with, like 5 kilometers an hour or 2 kilometers an hour, because these are very big ships. But even that, with such a big payload can cause a lot of damage, and the propellers as well, like the propellers spinning as well. So we have to take some precautions, maybe propeller guards, or I don't know what the solution is, but there must be a solution, technological solution that we can implement at a reasonable cost, because these companies who are running these shipping vessels are running at huge profit margins, right? So,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this has to be taken into account. There's another article that I found which basically talks about the new whales and collisions. It's actually an article from last year, but this is because of the Rachel Moore, the whole story. So let me just share that article once. Um, so it says threading the eye of the needle, the race to save whales. This is a sweet girl. So this was
mm,
the photo of her eye that Rachel Moore took, and which became really, really famous because it was very detailed. And This is another humpback whales video, but this is where it shows that they've mapped the different kinds of whales and where they're found. So, you can see
mm,
the whales here, you can see the whales here, and they're all different kinds of whales, and they have their distinct marked territories of where they usually travel and where they are
right.
usually found. And then this is where all is being overlapped with shipping routes. So if you can see, most of the whales' territories are overlapping with the shipping territories. So if the shipping lanes are crossing across, it's crisscrossing across their habitats. And
Mm,
um, the current mitigation measures are not a very great measure. Um, like It also talks about how the NOAA is doing all of these mitigation measures, the rerouting measures, the speed reduction, and areas to avoid. And then it also talks about how, if management areas need to only be expanded by 2.6% of the ocean surface to achieve full coverage of risk hotspots. It's only 2.6% of expansion of management areas, and we would not be hitting the whales because 92% of global whale ranges overlap with shipping activity.
mm.
Yeah.
I think this is a very small price or small consideration that we have to make to protect this beautiful marine mammals, right?
Yeah, and
Uh,
we've done a great job because in most countries except like Japan and I think Norway and Iceland, most countries have dropped whaling. Oh, also not to forget, I think is that no, it's not Finland. What is the Faroe Islands? And Faroe Islands with their Grinder trap. But most
huh.
countries understand that okay, whales are not something to kill, and there's nothing that you would profit off a whale. So we have brought back populations, but if we brought back populations, then we are also responsible for keeping those populations intact. Whales
Mm,
have their part in the environment, that they play a very important role of regulating the krill and regulating everything in the in the poles and wherever they stay. So we need to take that into account and not just uh, you know just run over them. And this is not just with whales but with other animals as well. Anything that's on the surface gets hit. So if the turtle's on a surface, it gets hit. If there are rays on the surface, they get hit. And all of these cause loss of life. So when you know that there are these patterns, if you can just expand the protection area by 2.5%, we can achieve protection of not just whales but maybe other animals as well that are
mm,
traveling by the same route.
mm. So definitely, we would like to know if anybody listening has has been working on a solution themselves, researching on a solution themselves, or knows someone who's doing research in this particular space. I think AI, as Meghna pointed out, AI could be a great sort of use case for this kind of wildlife management, and it has already been started to being used in that space as well, greatly, to my ultimate joy and appreciation from my side as well, that AI is being used in these cases, and it's a good use case as well. So yeah, if anybody knows anyone or themselves are working on this, please let us know down in the comments. We would love to hear from you and maybe speak with you on an episode. But yeah, other than that, I think for the time being, until those measures are being implemented, yeah, slowing down is a good idea. I think it will take 1 week more to reach your destination, but that's fine.
True. Okay. What else? What is the next topic?
Yeah, the next one we will be covering. Let me just have a quick look. Um, the curious quest to make this frog poisonous again. Again, very intriguing title as well. And this is a article from National Geographic, which I definitely love. Harlequin frogs of the Atelopus genus, among the world's most toxic amphibians, face an unexpected crisis. Some have lost their poison, leaving them vulnerable to predators. Conservation biologist Brian Gatwick discovered this alarming reality when radio-tracked Limosa frog, released in Panama's Mamoni Valley, was found being eaten by a whip scorpion, an animal that would normally avoid such toxic prey. The greater threat, however, is a microscopic fungus called Batrachoctrium dendrobatidis, PD, which has devastated amphibian populations worldwide since the 1970s, driving at least 90 species to extinction, including Panama's iconic golden frog. Recognizing harlequin frogs' extreme susceptibility, conservationists began captive breeding programs to save remaining populations, releasing individuals back into the wild while racing to understand why some frogs are losing their critical chemical defenses.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that really stands out from this is obviously making the frog poisoning poisonous again. Is why it exactly is it happening. The second is, there is a microscopic fungus which is devastating amphibian populations since the 1970s. Now, if it was humans, we would have found a solution for it by now. We would have found a
Mm.
solution in 2 or 3 years so that it doesn't drive so many people to death. But because it's frogs, we're like, okay, let it be and let it drive like 90 species to extinction. It doesn't matter. Like, they're just frogs.
Mm. Just sharing an image of the frog, beautiful looking frog, the Panamanian golden frog, Atelopus zeteki, has been extinct in the wild since 2009, thanks in part to a deadly skin disease. Now, researchers have found that frog raised in captivity may have lost the poisonous toxins that once kept them safe from predators in the wild. Now, the discussion question we have is, if saving a species from extinction means breeding out its defenses, are we preserving life or just the idea of it? This is a very philosophically heavy question, but what's your response to that, Meghna?
I think we're preserving the idea of it. Like, we're not really, preserving it, because if it is losing its poison for whatever reasons, it is losing it because it might be a way that it's evolving, maybe it's a way that is beneficial for it, then who are we to call ourselves saviors and then bring back the poison to save it? Maybe it was the reason that if it's just climate or global warming or the stress, then it's different. But if it is something that is happening very naturally, then we're just preserving life. You
It's
would
like
just present the
the
idea.
reason I said it's a philosophical question because it's the idea of the ship of Theseus, right? If replace every part of a ship and then use the discarded parts to create a new ship, which one is the original ship? Is the old ship or the new ship you created? But this has been extinct in the wild, so the only way to bring it back into the wild is through a captive breeding program. Now, the captive breeding program is actually removing the toxins. Why it's doing that, again, scientists will have the answer, but for some reason it's doing that. And Now when they are being released back into the wild, they do not have their natural defenses. So it's a real conundrum, to say the least.
Oh yeah, and also it's very interesting, but it does say that the scientists had, because they were losing out on the frogs, they're so these the frogs that belong to this Atelopus genus are extremely toxic, and with a single individual are able to kill like thousands of mice. So like
Mm,
it's some yeah. So it was really really toxic, but what happened was that they thought that they would release this 83 captive bred frogs into the wild,
mm,
and these captive bred frogs, before they even got this fungus, they became food for animals. And
right.
then they tried to see what exactly caused them to lose the poison. And it seems that they actually lost the poison because they were born in captivity.
Right.
So that means that when they were born in captivity, it was something like where the frogs just knew that they did not have predators to probably have to
That is
survive
very
from.
strange, to say the least.
Yeah. So they probably so the scientists actually bred them in captivity to give them a chance for survival because they
Yeah,
were dying. But the breeding in captivity has made them lose their um,
correct.
toxin, yeah, which is
Mm.
which is really really sad because I guess that is the thing, like not everything can be bred in captivity even if it is for their greater good, because that means you're changing their environment, and maybe environment is one of the ways that a lot of animals are born with certain things.
Now, this is really interesting in the article, this part. So, where do poisonous frogs get their poison? In the pet trade, the phenomenon of frogs losing their toxicity is well documented. The Dendrobatidae family, more commonly known as the poison dart frogs, acquire their toxins from ants and mites they eat in the wild. Feed them different insects, and their toxicity will dissipate over time. Captive bred poison darts never eat the insects that make them poisonous, so they are completely toxin free, which is, of course, desirable for pet owners. So I think something similar might have happened
Oh
in the
yeah,
case
maybe it's the
of the
diet
Atelopus
then.
frogs as well.
It's the diet, and they're not able to provide the diet that they would usually have in
Hmm.
the wild.
Or we do not exactly know the correct diet for these frogs.
Yeah, it is absolutely possible because it's not like they're probably documenting these frogs like 24/7 and watching what
And it
exactly
has
foods.
been extinct in the wild since 2009.
Yeah, and that is the problem. So if it is not, it's not ideal for, because if that frog has been bred in captivity, then it is not building up on that toxin, and it is not becoming poisonous. So if it is not becoming poisonous and you release it into the wild, then it has zero self defense.
It has zero self defense. It cannot survive in that because it evolved the toxin for a specific reason, because the environmental threats were great, and those environmental threats still exist. They cannot defend themselves, and then there would be some hope that the next generation will be poisonous again because they'll be eating the right things. But then, if the current generation that has been released cannot survive, then how will they produce the next generation? So it's a real chicken and egg problem.
Yeah, and there's one more problem here. It's saying that these predators for the frogs, they may have not come across one of these frogs, right? Because they've
Mm,
been extinct for a few years. So now, if they're even released in the wild, they don't associate them with, and like something poisonous that they shouldn't eat because they haven't even seen them. Now, all these frogs and their predators, they don't live for so long. So they may have been living in the last 10 years and they've not seen these frogs. So now, what's
mm.
happening is when these non poisonous frogs are being released, it says that like even though bright colors may have previously served as a warning, now these bright colors are serving as an invitation. And the scientist says they're like little blinking McDonald's signs. So
Yeah,
they're
and
bright and they're
that would have
inviting.
been okay. That would have been okay if the frogs were still poisonous and they tried to eat them and they would just die. And then slowly over the few generations they would acquire that aversion to these frogs again. But since they're not poisonous, then that aversion is not being developed in these predators. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only solution is to see if they can still find some wild frogs, see what they eat, observe what they eat, and have the same diet given, and then observe if they can actually be bred in captivity and then
I mean,
release
they
them
have been
again.
extinct in the wild since 2009, so it's a real conundrum.
Apparently, only there. Like there is there was a place like I think London or somewhere. During he says a chemist Philip Jarvis set out to find some wild Atelopus frogs, and during a stint in the Smithsonian's lab in Panama, it took weeks of him surveying stream banks just to find a couple dozen frogs, but he still did find. So this was in 2019, but in Panama, it might be extinct here, but they're still there elsewhere. So they're trying to see if there is a way that they can
To
bring the things
observe
in
that,
back.
and that would be great. That would be great if there are still frogs in the wild and they can be observed, and their diet, mostly related to diet, maybe, but could be something else as well. So that they need to be observed regularly to make that decision. So I think again, it's a real like we are doing the right thing in this scenario where we are trying to breed in captivity and trying to bring it back into the wild, but unfortunately that is causing some unintended effects, which is not good for the survival of these frogs. So until we figure it out, I think it's better not to release anymore, but that the scientists will already know. And then I think it needs to be figured out how to bring the toxicity back in these frogs and
And
save them
also
from this
maybe
disease.
find a way to cure BD because most of the frogs are dying from it. So if there is a
Yeah.
way to kind of kill that fungus, then we can save the rest of the frogs. Because
Mm,
if it's only affecting frogs and it's running through frogs, then there has to be a way to stop it.
no,
But
absolutely.
yes, this is a opening. Like this is one of those wake up calls that not all animals can be bred in captivity, and not all animals function well in captivity, and not all animals can function. In fact, even with the possums, like they were trying to see if they could get possum fur by breeding them in captivity, and the stress given to the possums by keeping them in captivity was so much that it would affect their fur, and it was not smooth enough anymore, and it wasn't great enough anymore. So you could not breed like possums in captivity because they did not function well there, and that caused their fur to become of low quality.
That is very curious. And like, yeah, that has been the case. Like some animals are very good in captivity, but a lot of the endangered animals, especially like the vaquita, the one of the most like endangered porpoises and like cetaceans in the world, the vaquita. Only I think 20 or 60 of these remain. They have been tried to be bred in the wild. They will die before they breed in the wild, in the captivity. The Great Indian Bustard, which we did an episode on, um, the bird, the great GIB, it is notoriously difficult to breed it in the wild. I think we did a story where one hatchling had been successfully bred, which was a good sign, but it is notoriously very difficult to breed them in the wild, sorry, in the captivity. So yeah, it's yeah, not everything is suitable for that.
True. And
Mm.
in our race to save some species, we might lose them all. So we have to be very
Mm,
careful of how we want to save some species by keeping them captive. Um, but yeah, so we'll move on to the next topic.
right.
Oops, do you want to do your the 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 industry one, the music industry one first, and then we can go to the war topics in the last.
We can. This is an interesting one. Um, this again, this is an effect of climate change that you generally wouldn't have thought of. But this comes from Mongabe, this report, and it says heat and pests are making it hard to grow a gourd that's critical for Indian classical music. The tanpura, a foundational instrument in Indian classical music, features a long wooden neck and four strings attached to a sound chamber traditionally crafted from a bottle gourd. These gourds must measure 53 to 60 inches in circumference with thick, heavy shells that produce a resonant tong tong sound when dried. Despite However, climate change is threatening the centuries old craft. Rising temperatures cause gourds to rot before the harvest, while unseasonal rains, pests, and diseases reduce both yield and quality. Farmers report shrinking gourd sizes in recent years, directly affecting instrument sound quality. Scientists confirm that hot, humid conditions accelerate pest proliferation. This crisis jeopardizes the only goat farmers' livelihood, not only the goat farmers' livelihood, but also the future of Tanpura and Indian classical music's living tradition. So, this is again, I'll share some images here to actually show what it's meant. So Tanpura is the Indian classical music. It's widely used in the Indian classical music space, and it's a drone instrument which is used to help keep keep your scale and tone and while you're singing. So and this part, the bottom part of the tanpura, is the gourd that's used to make the bottom bulb almost, which is the resonant part of the tanpura. And these are the gourds, in the farm. So they're grown. They're basically grown dried, and all the pulp is scraped out, and then that shell is basically used for making the tanpuras. And these are not edible, like we don't eat them, but these are just made to create these musical instruments. So yeah, you can see the similarity in shape, you know the goat shape and the tanpura's shape. It's completely adapted to the shape of the gourd. And it's an unintended, like unexpected industry that is being affected by climate change and, pest proliferation and things like that. So we are not only losing something beautiful in the natural world, but we are also losing something immensely beautiful and bringing a lot of joy to a lot of people in the human man-made world as well. So it's really curious and sad.
I'm a little curious though, then why are the shells supposed to produce a tong tong sound when dried? If it's not the string, then why does the shell need to produce sound? Like, are they using the shell part as well to play music?
So you would have seen every string-based instrument has some kind of a bulb, some
Mm-hmm.
kind of a chamber, hollow chamber. So the
Mm-hmm.
strings do not produce a sound. This resonation of the vibrations inside that chamber is what produces the sound.
Mm-hmm.
So the guitar has a chamber,
Yes.
the sitar has a chamber, the sarod has a chamber, the esraj has a chamber, tanpura similarly has a chamber. So that hollow chamber is the only thing that's required to produce the sound. So that's why that chamber is so important. And like the good instrument makers, I've heard from my father and grandmother that good instrument makers are people who can craft that chamber so precisely that it makes the best sounds. So yeah.
Ah, okay. Yes. So, yeah, this is one of those stories where you wouldn't believe climate change is affecting, but it's affecting a whole industry.
Mm.
And also, why do people not eat the inside part of that gourd? It's just the shell that's
S-
required, right?
yes, but the thing is, this because this has been bred to be big, the insides are tasteless and not edible.
Oh, so it's affecting an industry where it's not food at all. Like it's just
No,
for music.
just for
Oh, that's
music.
that's that's quite sad. But is there like a solution or like a substitute? Like
Yes,
what were they doing?
there exists electronic versions of these instruments which play the drone basically through software, but obviously it's not as good as the real one.
Mm-hmm.
um, and the practitioners often complain about that. So inevitably, if this happens, then everyone will be forced to move to the digital version of the instrument. But
Yeah, that
yeah,
means that we are actually losing out on everything that is traditional just because of everything that's modern. So climate
yes,
change is very modern, and the heat and the pests and everything else is, I mean, for now we can just say that okay, this instrument is going to probably have to adapt and to a very different changing environment, but it's not just the instrument right now because that is very specific. We can see the changes, but the same changes are happening for us as well with
mm,
with everything because climate
mm,
change is very real.
yes, everything beautiful is being killed and destroyed by climate change, be it in the natural realm or, in this case, in the man-made realm. Um,
True. Yeah.
yeah,
As much as it is sad, I don't know what the solution for this is, and we'll have to see if the farmers are able to find some way around the growing climate change issues. But if not, then
I mean the only solution is that we, you know, curb our enthusiasm and curb our desires and try
no,
and
maybe there might be a way for them to like kind of build greenhouses and regulate the temperature in a way that they can maybe like grow these gourds so they are more resilient and they don't have pests and other things. I don't know. That's just one solution in my head.
yeah, but yeah, again, if it's economically feasible or not, but I don't know, but yeah, climate change is having some great consequences across all sectors and all. It does not look at how rich you are, how poor you are. You can get by being rich for till a certain extent, but after that it'll get you.
True,
Don't think just because you're a billionaire you can escape it.
true, absolutely true.
Mhm.
Okay. So our next topics are actually about war. They're all related to war, and they are actually like a prelude to our episode. That's our
Mhm.
next episode. You're going to hear about it soon. You're going to see all our material that we're posting, but this is kind of like a prelude to it.
Mhm.
But we have this great episode next week with some guests, and we're going to discuss some amazing topics,
Mhm.
which are very current. But talking about the topics right now,
Mhm.
um, there there are a couple of topics on Iran, and then there's one from Gaza. The Iran topics are: war reveals the isolation of Iran scientists. War in Iran has compounded decades of isolation for Iranian scientists, exposing how international sanctions have long restricted their access to funding, collaboration, and professional development. Despite a tenuous ceasefire in mid April, researcher Imran Ebrahimi and his NGO colleagues seized a brief window to visit Maharlu Lake, a key flamingo breeding site. They observed at least 5,000 greater flamingos and noted the lake was unusually full, likely because wartime disruption had reduced agricultural and industrial water draw. The team is also tracking how airstrikes are displacing bird population. Yet the conflict has simultaneously highlighted a pre-existing crisis. Iranian conservationists and researchers have faced prolonged international isolation, making wartime scientific work even more precarious. Conservation efforts, as ever, remain sidelined during conflict. And with this, we have another news that says Iran has re arrested prominent conservationists that were freed just 2 years ago. Iranian wildlife conservationists Hauman Joker and Sepideh Kashani, along with Sepideh's sister Sima Kashani, were arrested by security forces in Tehran on July 1st, 2026. Joker and Sepideh, who are married experts on the critically endangered Asiatic cheetah, with fewer than 30 individuals remaining in the wild, had previously been arrested in 2018 on espionage charges tied to the use of wildlife camera traps. After 6 years in prison, they were pardoned and released in April 2024. During the latest raid, agents confiscated electronic devices before detaining all three. Their attorney, Hojat Kemani, confirmed the arrest to the media. The Wildlife Conservation Society expressed alarm and urged Iranian authorities to clarify the group's legal status. No official reason has been given for Seema Kashani's arrest. And this is how turbulent it is to be a conservationist in a war country and a conservative country both. So this is very problematic. There is like one silver lining with the flamingo story, but in totality it's difficult, like even to try to research, because if you're researching, one, you don't have access to people across the world to discuss your research with, and second, if you use any kind of technology to research on animals, then they would call it espionage and they would get you arrested. So it's really
Mm,
hard being a conservationist in not just in Iran but most war-torn countries, but especially in Iran.
mm. And the third story we have in this area, in this topic, is the Gaza scientist still tracking manta rays from a war zone. Mohammed Abu Daya is a marine ecologist from Gaza, specializing in spine-tailed devil rays, a critically endangered migratory species. Before the war, he taught at Palestinian universities, collaborated with local fishers, and gathered field data that helped establish Gaza within the species' known range. He studied a 2013 mass landing of hundreds of devil rays, not simply as a conservation failure, but as a symptom of poverty, restricted fishing zones, and depleted stocks under Israeli blockade. When the current war began, Abu Daya lost his home, office, and sea access as universities, ports, and infrastructure were destroyed. Displaced multiple times and living without reliable food, water, or electricity, he has continued his research. In 2025, mid war, he co authored a Mediterranean wide study on devil ray movement, tracking a ray he personally tagged off Gaza all the way to Spain. Now, also, I think, Meghna, it's important to highlight the determination and the grit of these scientists who are so, like, we talk about these things through our show, and we try to do whatever little we can through these discussions and through our show, but it just is, it these kinds of achievements just overshadows whatever, like, we are not even doing 0.1% of what these scientists are, fighting for in war-torn zones and in, such extreme personal threat, security threat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like imagine this Gaza scientist, he's lost his home, his office, the access. He did not have food, water, electricity, and he still continued his research. I mean, that is something which I don't know, like, if people who do not have that passion can do it. Like, you really need to have that kind of passion. You need to feel that research. You need to feel for animals. You need to feel like that is absolutely important to keep going. So this is one of those examples where they keep going. It's the same thing with the Iran scientists. They kept going, like, even though they were released after 6 years, they probably brought back some technological instruments and they wanted to continue their research. And before they could even continue the research, they were again arrested just because they have camera traps or they have other kind of technology. And it's a very sorry reason and a sad reason that these countries give, because you know
Mm,
for you the war becomes priority because you
mm,
want to fight and you want to fight back. Like, I understand that it's very important for you to fight back or fight for whatever reasons which is justifiable in your terms, but at the same time you cannot make it hard, you cannot make it harder for people who want to save the environment or the climate or the animals because they genuinely care. So you
mm,
cannot make it harder on them because they are the ones who are going over and above. to try to save the environment, and you are someone who is actually causing all of this pain to the environment. Like war doesn't do good to anybody. Like
Mm,
it causes a lot of harm to humans. There are a lot of casualties. There are a lot of civilian casualties as well. And at the end of the day, you have lost time, you've lost money, you've lost resources, you've lost people, and you've lost the environment. And what does anybody gain from it? Nobody gains anything, like anything at all.
mm. Yeah, this that is true. That is um like I don't know if there is a because like there is a policy of how reporters and photographers, like war photographers or reporters, are given unimpeded access to war zones, and they can be present in the war zone, and like both the sides have, like, even war has rules, so both the sides agree to not harm these reporters or photographers, and that's how we get the reports and photographs from the war field. And this has been a time honored tradition since the days of the Mahabharata war, 2000 years ago, 4000 years ago, whatever it was. But can we devise something similar for these you know scientists, these special class of people who are fighting to save the wildlife?
Absolutely, it should be like that. Like, I mean, no matter what the government is doing, the government needs to prioritize the people who are determined to do their work, and you're working on the environment and for the greater good. Then you do something that gives them the scope to keep doing their work. You don't
Mm,
isolate them, you don't charge them, you don't start arresting and blaming them when all they care about is the animals, they care about the environment. They don't care about your war. Like, they don't want the war. They just
mm,
want their research and everything that they care about the animal to be out there, so that they can save this animal or give it one more chance. So with their
mm.
research and with their findings, there is more way or more scope to know. And absolutely, like how the journalists and the photographers and the war get special status, there should be special status for the conservationists as well.
And I think these, you know, you can make that process rigorous, checking these scientists' credentials and checking their affiliations, so that you are sure that they are not committing some kind of espionage. You can do that, as and when required, if you're a war torn country. But uh, arresting
But
them
yeah, yeah.
randomly and blocking their access, that should not be the case. And also, I think, again, we will have all these detailed discussions in the next episode. But there should be some kind of policy, of, like, how generally, again, I caveat that generally in a war, because a lot of countries have been doing that exact thing. So that's why I caveat it. But generally, in a war, you wouldn't travel hospitals, or sorry, target hospitals or schools or things like that. There should be those zones of importance, conservation importance, that you can't target as well. Um,
It is actually like an unsaid rule, but the problem is that these rules keep breaking. There was actually one news that I had seen where it is something where you can't really bomb schools and hospitals, but Israel didn't follow those rules.
yes, that's why I
Yeah,
caveated it. Like,
and the US also didn't follow those rules with Iran. So it is something like where those rules are in place, but they're not followed during war. So, but who is going to punish them? Like
no, no,
the
but
other.
the international court can. It is a war crime to do that. And
Yeah,
when this is over, so
but
the international court, like the International Court of Law, prosecuted all the Nazis after the Holocaust. Um, Similarly, they should be and would be punished for the war crimes that they commit. The International Court of Law has the power to do that, but it's the matter of when the war gets over, and when it's safe again. Then they can do that.
I honestly don't know because even international courts of crime can be, I don't know how much they can be influenced. So if they can be influenced, then you really never know like in whose favor it will go. With all
Oh,
these
true.
um, very wealthy nations, they know how to drive their way through it, which is why there are no repercussions or consequences for whatever Trump is doing or for what Netanyahu is doing. They're doing what they're doing because they know that they just can't be stopped or won't be stopped. So
Mm,
that is the sad part of it, and they will, and they claim they're doing the greater good because they're plundering nations, other nations, but nobody is gaining from this. And even with that is actually a very good idea. I think if you have any kind of uh, suspicion on the scientist, then what you can do is like maybe on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, you can go through their footage. Like you
mm,
can go through their camera trap footage, you can go through everything that's in their laptop, do like a clean search, do like everything, but don't just arrest them because they're trying to do their work. Because this, like most of these scientists are really crazy about their work. They really
mm,
want to work. The problem is that they're not very good on communicating their work to the outside world, so the outside world can benefit and the public can also be part of the research. But they're very, very dedicated to their work. They're very dedicated to the animals, they're very dedicated to the environment, and they really want to publish that paper so that other people in the community can also benefit from that. So they're not interested in the war. They're not interested in becoming spies. They're not interested in anything else. And the only way to do that is to check, then blame.
checks and blame. And I think just as an example, Mohammad Abudaya and all the other scientists, these people are working in spite and despite of all the trouble that is thrown at them. And we will have these hear about these accounts and understand it in detail in our next episode. And I think definitely put reminders on your calendar for that. And we will slowly reveal what the episode is about and the guests we have there. But yeah, it's going to be exciting chat with all our special guests.
Yep. And yeah, I mean it's really, really, really sad. We do not understand how war can really tear apart your entire life and everything that you built your life around. So we're going to discuss how war affects these scientists mentally, how it really makes it hard for them, how do they keep going, what is their motivation, everything. Like we really don't understand it, and they're quite superhuman in that sense. It's really sad what they face, but they keep going. That resilience is very, very admirable.
True. Hats off. Hats off. Um, cool.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's become very, very solemn. But I think we'll do one last topic, which is a little happier. So it's not this, heavy, and we'll end it on that topic. So this topic is called it says Cabo Verde program, and its fishers have been protecting the sea for 10 years. In Cabo Verde, a program called Guardians of the Sea marks its 10th anniversary with 190 volunteer fishers across 7 islands acting as ocean observers during their daily work. Launched in 2016 on the island of Mayo and led by Mayo Diversity Foundation alongside 8 NGOs, the initiative trains fishers to monitor marine megafauna and report illegal activities. The program expanded to its seventh island, Antayo, in 2024. Volunteer Alberto Martius, who fishes off Fogo Island with his son Leandro, exemplifies the program's intergenerational spirit, patrolling waters daily to protect ocean wildlife. Fishers serve as a natural deterrent against illegal practices while raising awareness about sustainable marine management, reflecting Cabo Verde's deep cultural and economic connection to the sea. And this is amazing. It's been 10 years, and there are 190 volunteer fishermen, which means that they want to do it on their own. They're volunteering in, and they are protecting 7 islands and have become ocean observers. And I think this was something that OOPS had mentioned, like a lot of these protecting the culture and protecting the environment, a lot of these stories are coming from South America and Africa. And
Hmm.
we are quite surprised how, the indigenous communities are so involved in Africa and South America, as opposed to the rest of the world that actually want to commit and protect.
Yes. I think that's an important distinction to make and important call out for all the developed, so-called developed nations. The common theme here, as Meghna said, is they're coming from economically stifled and so-called developing nations. These stories, these kinds of stories, uh, you know the protection drive that these people have, even from India we have such stories, from the tribal communities, from the indigenous communities of certain parts of India as well. So it's very, again, if you think about it long and hard, it doesn't really surprise me that these people will do it, because all the developed, so-called developed nations, running in the rat race, are just focus on the economic side of things and how to become a billionaire or millionaire, whatever the next thing is, fly in their private jets to get like a tiramisu or whatever, burn billions of gallons of uh, you know, jet fuel and things like that. Whereas these people, look at this. I'm just sharing a screenshot. These guys have provided handbooks with all the different labels and things like that to the Guardians of the Sea volunteers that list that species they might spot during fishing trips. What a beautiful, how beautiful of a story is this of the people of Cape Verde, that they are doing this. Look at that. Look at the details, and the fishermen might would have asked for this. It had to have been a collaboration between the scientists and the fishermen. How beautiful is
Absolutely.
this? Look at that.
Yes, and not just the handbook, but I think there are a lot of really nice photos of the
Hmm.
fishermen in
Hmm.
itself. So, like these are the fishermen,
Hmm.
all happy and decked up and going out to do their fishing and to protect the ocean. And this is Alberto and his son, who are both volunteers. So it's intergenerational now. So
Wow.
the dad's been, a volunteer, and now the son is also a volunteer. So that's great because they're passing this entire love for the ocean and protecting it down their generation. So then maybe Leandro would pass it down to his son or his daughter. So that would
Hmm.
be great. And this is one of the fishing boats that are returning back from going out to observe the ocean. And this is another person with who's been with the Guardian of the Seas, who's been volunteering. He's a father of two, and he has been a fisherman for 9 years. A lot of documentation about the fishermen, their faces, and it's great. And this is a coordinator for the Sustainable Fishing Program, and she is standing in front of Mosteros. And Mosteros is one of the most active communities in this program. So it's great, like because there are training sessions that take place at the local fishers association headquarters. So this, the coordinator, the fisherman, this handbook that Oops has already shown, um, and all the fishing boats and the catches that are, being shown.
I think
So
the religious portrait is also good. I think, religion with all its flaws, has this impact, like, you know, can have this impact on, the community, the surrounding community. This is the mural of Saint Peter with fishers in Mosteros Fogo Island, and this is beautiful. Like, if religion has the potential to play a very positive role in these kinds of scenarios, and I'm all for it. Again, belief is a personal choice, and I'm all for it. But I think, this is a beautiful story overall. Um,
yeah,
Again,
and if your religion can save animals than destroying them, then I think that is a really great way. Culturally, like this was something I think Ups and we were talking. That culturally, religions were brought about to bring people together, but at the same time have like fear and have respect and like have this kind of sacred touch to when you even hunted down animals, like like the like when we used to hunt down animals all as well, and when we became like a species that had religion, the animals were still revered, they were respected, and we did not just hunt them down or kill them just because we wanted to, just because we could, which is the case today. And sadly, the bigger religions, the Abrahamic religions, talk about how animals are meant to be food, or meant to be used by us. And this was something, when I was doing the research for my thesis project, we I came across a lot of papers that said that till it was culturally significant in your religion to protect animals, people protected them. But once Christianity came in, it wiped out that cultural significance and attachment with the with nature. I'm not blaming Christianity or Islam or any other religion, but I do think it's very important that your religion talks about animals and talks about its respect and talks about how great they are, how it talks about the environment and not about just destroying them.
I feel like there is a caveat, a little bit of a caveat there, because these religions developed in the desert. All the Abrahamic religions developed in the desert. Very, I would say, very challenging circumstances for the people who developed these religions. And one again, another Hindi proverb comes to mind, that if the donkey befriends the grass, or is in admiration of the grass, then what does that donkey eat?
The thing is,
So
it's not so much about eating, but it is about respecting what you eat. So the older religions taught you to respect animals. At the same time, even when you killed animals or you sacrificed animals, there was pain. Now what do they do? Like, when even these Abrahamic religions talked about, say, a sacrifice, like how, let's say, take for example Eid, it was meant that you brought up a sheep or a goat that you were really attached to, and you gave that up, so you felt pain. Now what they're doing is, just to honor the tradition, people buy a goat 3 days before, and then they kill the goat, and there is no amount of
yeah,
sacrifice or pain. So maybe what they started off with and how it's documented and how it's perceived now are very different as well. But right now, like, a lot of religions cause more harm than do good. Yes, but these regions like Cabo Verde, all the other religions, that all the other regions in Africa and South America where we're talking, they're all culturally still very much attached to the environment, and that is
and
why
they
they
have
take it.
found the, in religion, and religious texts are also open to interpretations, and they have found the more positive interpretations of these religious texts. And the mural showed how the Saint Peter is the, patron saint of these fishermen, and how they are also protecting the fish and wildlife, the marine wildlife. So yeah, hats
Yeah,
off
and
for such a program. And so many fishermen, such a long time, 10 years, it's a long time to be really dedicated with that. And I think the 10,000 rule, the 10,000 hour rule applies here, right? Like, if you do something for 10,000 hours, then it becomes just your muscle memory, and then you can't not do it, right?
I don't know about the
So
10,000 hours. I thought it was 40 days. 40 days of practice makes it like
10,000
a
hour is the new standard that is being propagated by psychologists and things like that. So
1,000
if you
is
do
too
something
much.
for 10,000 hours, then it just becomes your muscle memory. So
10,000
I
is way too much. What are you talking about? 10,000 is way too.
look it up when you have the free time. But it is the new standard, and I think 10 years has covered that 10,000 hours very easily. So yeah.
Yeah, and we're hoping that other communities and other people, and especially developed nations, can learn from these nations, because it is very, very, very important for you to be in tune with nature to actually want to protect nature. Like, once you go into nature, you feel the calm, the solitude, the happiness of saving it. Then you would naturally want to do that. Then everything else that you're doing, the race for money never helps anyone. The race to plunder other countries never helps anyone. The race to kill the environment and climate never helps anyone. So let's hope that other countries can learn from these developing nations.
Mm. Yeah, definitely something they have to learn. And I think, again, to put it a little bit harshly, it's like shame on the developed nations that they are not the trailblazers in this field, and you know, with all their money and infinite resources.
Absolutely. Yep. That at least was a good way to kind of end our episode at this time.
Mm.
As usual, obviously, you would hear a message from me. One, we would actually want to know that which topic did you find the most interesting, because we try to find a lot of different topics. We still have like almost, I think, 10, 15 more topics we could cover, but we are short on time and people tell us our episodes are quite long. So, I mean, this is actually short compared to the
Yeah,
kind of
we can go on for like 3 4 hours, but yeah, we cut it short just in the
um,
interest.
But our question would be, have you ever seen a whale in the wild? And if you have you seen, have you felt a lot of joy seeing it, like a lot of excitement? I think you should actually speak to your local government to make stricter laws and stricter policies for speed movements. So you do save these whales, because if we save the whales, only then do we get to experience the whales. And when we experience the whales, then the whales will also protect the ocean. So, fight for your whales, go out, see them, and feel the happiness. And let us know in the comments about our favorite topic today, your favorite topic today.
Um, yeah, and as always, do subscribe and follow us on all the social media platforms that you are on. It just helps with reaching this narrative to more and more people. We have been enjoying a little bit of uh, you know uh, increased downloads in terms of the recorded episodes on different podcasting platforms. So do consider leaving a rating if you're listening to us there. It is greatly helpful again to spread the message to as many people as possible. Again, we go live on all the social media platforms we are on at once, so you'll be able to catch us live anywhere you follow us. And if you like this episode, share it with someone who shares in your views about the environment, about climate change, or share with someone who does not share your views, just to give them a different set of views or expose them to a different set of views. They don't have to agree, but they can always listen and disagree, and debate you on that. But other than that, that's it for today. And we'll see you next Sunday for a very special episode. Same time, same channel. Have a good one, guys.
Bye bye.